Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Hard Claim with Viva La Sam. I'm Sam, and this is a show where we talk to people who play Blood on the Clocktower and get their player perspective of the game. And joining us for this week's episode is Sabenite. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right. So we have a script loaded in. You requested Lil Monst's Day Out by yourself. You have drawn a token. You've drawn the Banshee token. So that's fun. I've never been to Banshee because it's still pretty new, I guess. But have you been to
Yeah.
Banshee before?
Uh, don't believe so. Let me double check. No, it's marked as one of the 10 that I have not been.
Ah, gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess you probably won't count this, but you have drawn a Banshee token now at least.
Yeah. I suppose I could count it if I really wanted.
But so with that said, if you and I were chatting on day one, hypothetically, what would you claim?
Uh, what would I claim? I suppose I would really ask what you want me to claim or what you want to know. Uh, I think this. I started doing this on when I was evil on a. I think it was a game you story told actually on the TPI Mega Stream where I I was the poisoner, poisoned my puka on night one, and then just had to be outed evil. So I just started asking people what they wanted me to tell them. So I think I would probably do something similar because I want I want to look suspicious enough that like town I'm probably a minion, so town doesn't want to kill me. And then if there's a mez, the mez can just come find me. But I think I'd probably ask you what you want to hear, and then if you were a little aloof with what you wanted me to tell you, I don't know. I'd probably say like I'm the librarian or steward who saw someone who wasn't you.
Makes sense. Thinking about the Mezephiles, do you try to take a Mezephiles word? Like, is it something that
Yeah,
you want to do?
yeah. If it's offered, I'll always take it because I think it's like if someone's going out on that ledge for you, I think it's just kind of a good thing to take that deal. Someone's putting a lot of faith in you, and then if you don't turn evil, well, then that's another conversation you get to have the next day.
Makes
And
sense.
then,
Yeah.
yeah, I think I'm usually pretty happy to be evil and not the demon because I just kind of get to do really whatever I want and then just kind of take up time and space.
An evil Banshee is definitely interesting, right?
Oh yeah. Evil with a banshee ability is quite strong.
Yeah. Completely unrelated. Do you want to say the word snazzle?
Snazzle,
Hey, congratulations! Tonight you turned evil.
delightful.
You mentioned 10 characters you haven't been. What else haven't you been yet?
Yeah, so unsurprisingly, most of them are relatively new.
Mm-hmm.
The Zahn, the Boffin, the Kazali, Lord of Typhon. But I think one that's a little surprising that I haven't been. I haven't been the Minstrel, which is the only base 3 character I haven't been.
Interesting.
And I've played quite a bit of BMR, so it's a little. I guess people are a little hesitant to put it in. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
is something I could extrapolate from that.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Obviously, it makes sense too that it's all kind of the characters released within the last year.
Yeah.
All right, so let's rewind a bit. How and when did you discover Blood on the Clocktower?
I think like a lot of people, it was through NRB. I've been a wrestling fan for most of my life, so I kind of followed Wrestle Talk, then followed that pipeline to NRB to Blood on the Clocktower. Then I found the streams that TPI puts on, and then I think the first stream I saw was the Lycanthrope reveal stream, and then I stumbled my way into the unofficial, and then stumbled my way into some other communities, and then Grim Scenarios, and that's basically been my home community for the past just about a year now.
Great. Do you remember what your first game or several games were like?
Yes, my first game, I was the Raven Keeper who died on night 2. And then I saw The Undertaker. I remember because Jams was storytelling, and I just recently sent James a DM asking for some clarifications on a rule, and scrolled up to the top of my DMs with them and saw it was June of 21. So it's been quite a while. Maybe it was June of 22. 22 sounds more right. But I was the Raven Keeper who saw an Undertaker.
All right. Did you get a win?
I couldn't tell you.
Fair enough. What about the game hooked you that you kept on playing?
Yeah, so I in like elementary school, my friends and I would play Werewolf a bunch, and one of something we did is actually kind of similar to Clocktower, but I don't think is very similar to like most Werewolf games. We would get up, move around the house, and talk to each other for a while before we did votes or nominations. And like, I don't think that's the typical experience with Werewolf, from what I
Not really,
understand.
no.
So just kind of that was really cool, and then just kind of social deduction games I've liked basically growing up. And something that was really cool about Clocktower was you're always in the game even when you're dead. And like I think player elimination is the weakest part of every social deduction game. And like it's just the least fun part. You want to get together with your friends, and if you die first or you're eliminated first, like what are you doing? So I think that was the biggest thing that hooked me.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've told this story before, but before doing Clocktower, I was doing through Zoom Werewolf through the Dice Tower Werewolf group, and the more and more we played, the more moderators would kind of get more crazy characters they've created on their own, or roles, whatever you want to call them.
Mhm.
Sometimes the explanations would take half an hour. I heard some people say they sat through an hour of explanations.
Yeah.
And then you're in for an hour, 2 hour game, but you might get eliminated right away, and you just sat around for an hour just to hardly play. Um, yeah, so that's always definitely a big thing about the game, the no player elimination. All right, so there's only 10 characters you haven't been, so I guess that begs the question: how often do you play?
Uh, so so I used to play like multiple hours a day every day. Um, since like after that initial like I think burst everyone has of trying to get as much in as they can, uh, I started storytelling, and like that's something I really enjoy, storytelling, and so I think if you include storytelling, probably like 15-ish hours a week. Obviously, I storytell on the Grim Scenarios stream for the 4 hours on Tuesdays, and then sometimes Saturdays I'm storytelling for either 2 or 4 hours, and then I also storytell other games on the server over the weeks, and then also sometimes in person games. So counting storytelling is probably about 15 to 20 hours a week, and then games is maybe half of that or so. So playing about 10 hours a week, but it used to be a lot more.
Yeah, makes sense. How often do you get to play in person versus online?
So in person, there's the Philly group meets on Monday evenings. So I usually get down there maybe once a month or so. It depends like how my schedule lines up. I'm not quite in the city, so if I'm at home going down, it's a little like just traveling down takes the hour or so the public transit takes, and then an hour or so back. So just kind of time wise and paying for public transit needs to be worth it. But I try to get down at least once a month. They're a great group.
Yeah, when was the first time you got to play in person?
It was PAX Unplugged 2022
Right.
was my first in person game. It was uh, about a year or so into about half a year or so, I guess, after meeting a bunch of my friends now, and actually went to go meet Bunny in person because she works basically all the PAXs. Um, so, and being Philly local, I went down, and it was easy for me to go down to meet her, and then that was the first in-person game I got to play.
Yeah. So you've been playing maybe a half a year or whatever online. What was that transition like going from playing online to in person?
I think it's always a bit of a shock when you like. Obviously, the biggest one. I'm sure you've seen people at least say. 'Cause I don't know if you've got to play in person before playing
Mm-hmm.
online, but online you have perfect recall, right? You have the
Right.
Grim in front
Yeah.
of you. So, and my handwriting's atrocious to the point where it's not even worth me trying to take notes. So just the lack of having perfect recall was a bit jarring. And then also the noise, like playing in a convention's a lot different than playing in someone's home versus
Mm-hmm.
playing in like with a group of also playing with like a group of people who know each other versus a group of strangers is different. So like just all of that meshing together was a little jarring, but it was good, and it really made me want to come back and play in person more. So
Yeah. All right. So let's say you're sitting down, getting ready to play a game. Whether online or in person. You're about to draw out your token. Before that, what are you thinking or what are you doing? Are you like looking over the script or are you just kind of hanging out?
yeah, I'm mostly hanging out and kind of vibing, taking the temperature of the group. Like, is this a sillier group, a more serious group? Because I think I can kind of get a little out there with some of the things I do, and like that's not everyone's jam, and that's fine. I can also, uh, for lack of a better term, I can also be a little spikier, which for those who might not know the terms, like Magic the Gathering, which is another another game in my background. There's like the typograph of players, and Spike is the competitive player. So like I can be a competitive. I can try to world build, world self, and be like focused on the end game. But I think that kind of loses some of the magic of Clocktower. But if that's the group's vibe, that's the group's vibe.
Yeah. What kind of I guess sort of like wacky things would you do in a game if you're not thinking about it
Uh,
like too seriously?
yeah, maybe I'll claim maybe I'll claim to be the mutant regardless of what I am, even if I'm an outsider. Maybe I'll claim to like on the script. Maybe I'll claim to be the poisoner who picked somebody on the first night and try to just kind of gauge their reaction. Um, it depends on the group and like what the vibe of the game is. If there's like pre-game jokes and going on, I'll try to play into that. Um, yeah, one of the things is asking people what they want me to tell them and then just telling them that.
Yeah, makes sense. I personally, I tend to play pretty more, I guess, straightforward. Not competitive, but just like I don't know. I'm not very creative in my head, but I do enjoy playing in games with a range of people who are doing kind of all kinds of different things. Some sillier, some just kind of experiencing the silliness.
Yeah.
I always appreciate the variety. All right, so you draw your token. Maybe we've kind of already talked about this before, but do you prefer that your token's red or blue?
So I prefer either minions or outsiders. I want no responsibility if possible. And then if it's like if I have to draw a demon, I'm pretty happy to. Townsfolk are powerful and generally are much more helpful, but they kind of boring too a lot of the time. Whereas like with outsiders, there's some risk in what you're doing, so you kind of have to navigate that, which I think leads to more social things. And like I want to be playing this game to hang out with my friends.
That makes sense. So since you mentioned not wanting responsibility, do you play Travelers often at all?
Uh, since most of my like playing is scheduled like events and stuff, I don't get a chance. I love to play Travelers. Like if there's like pickup games that I get into, and then it's like an awkward number, like maybe it's 13 and people aren't feeling three minions or whatever, I'll offer to travel. I'm usually the first to offer to grab a traveler.
feel free to come play with Hard Claim. I run Travelers quite often.
Yeah, yeah. I've been
Uh,
meaning to get on over there.
yeah, most of our Travelers is because we have more than 15 players. Me, I'm like,
Yeah,
I'll run however many wants to play, and somehow it works for our group. So some,
yeah,
so I like Travelers too. Sometimes people like maybe they played in the first game. They're like, you know what? I've had a long day. That was kind of a rough game. Can I just travel the next game? I'm like, yeah, sure. Um,
yeah,
I never have a problem with it.
yeah. Also, like, I know that I've had people who have just had strings of drawing the demon.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes that just happens. You have the stick your head fingers, and you're the demon like 3 games in a row, and like at some point you just want the break. Like, just make me a traveler. I can be an evil traveler if you want, but just
Yeah,
keep this away from me.
it's always described was it like maximum power, minimal responsibility, which is why I
Yeah,
thought of Travelers when you when you mentioned that.
yeah,
Yeah, and sometimes I've had players who just even as a townsfolk, like they just they did all the things and just unfortunately nothing went right for good, and evil just kind of steamrolled. And not to say they didn't
yeah,
have fun, but it's just like, man, that was kind of exhausting. Can we can I maybe travel this time?
yeah. I think everyone's had a game or two like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So talking about the base scripts, so of course there's Trouble Brewing, Bad Moon Rising, Sex and Violence. Which of those is your favorite?
Yeah. So it used to be Sex and Violence was my favorite, and then I had a string of not so great Sex and Violence games, and I think Sex and Violence is also one that translates a lot better in person than it
Mm-hmm.
does online. Like like we talked about earlier, like the perfect recall for Sex and Violence just makes that so like makes town so much stronger. Um, so I lately it's been Trouble Brewing. Trouble Brewing's just such a good script.
Mm-hmm.
It's so balanced, and like I've never had a bad game of Trouble Brewing, and I've always had interesting games of Trouble Brewing. Like, you can always throw stuff in. You can have the same people in the game, and it's going to be a different game. It's going to be an interesting game. And then Bad Moon Rising is also really good. Like, I think these days I would probably say Trouble Brewing's my favorite. Bad Moon Rising's a not not super close, but fairly close second. And then Sex and Violence is probably a much more distant third than it used to be.
Yeah, I feel like I've had a similar experience with Sex and Violence. I've mentioned this on here before, but I feel that Sex and Violence has higher highs but also lower lows. Whereas Trouble Brewing,
Yeah,
you kind of mentioned never having a bad Trouble Brewing game, and Trouble Brewing just is always consistently just not just good but great. Um,
yeah,
I this last Friday I ran Sex and Violence game, and it was probably one of the crazier best Sex and Violence games I've ran in a long time. And I would say that was probably better than most of my Trouble Brewing games. But most S&V games aren't like that.
yeah,
Usually they're still good, but then sometimes you just have a game where just kind of nothing goes right and evil just kind of gets stomped, or sometimes good gets stomped. And yeah, it's usually still fun, but yeah, Trouble Brewing's just super consistent and great.
yeah.
What kind of characters do you like to bluff as, whether you're good or evil?
Uh, that's a good question. So when I'm evil, I will almost never take a demon bluff. Like, regardless if I'm the demon or not, I don't want to take a demon bluff. That I think that comes from much earlier when I was playing in my Clocktower career, where people will be like, "Oh, they're not in a double claim, so they must be the demon." So I
Mm-hmm.
like in the end game, so I'm much happier to just claim like things that are happy to die. Like, on the script, I'd probably be happy to claim librarian, steward, pixie, spent seamstress. Like, either if I'm evil and town wants to waste the kill, that's great. If I'm good and I want to stay alive, then evil probably won't want to spend the time killing a librarian or a steward.
I ran in person trouble brewing yesterday, and as is tradition, a brand new player was an imp on her first game,
Yeah, yeah,
and
makes sense.
halfway through the game, I pulled her aside because I'm trying to get better at just kind of pulling people aside in general, just to talk to them as a storyteller. I
Mhm.
said, hey, so what are you telling people? And she's like, I'm just kind of saying all kinds of different things. I
Yeah,
was like, you're gonna fit right in.
yeah, she sounds great.
And that's what I told her after the game. I was like, most humans will stick with a bluff, but there is value in just kind of not doing that, or purposely being suspicious as a demon because people might discount you as a minion and go for anybody else. It's a strategy for sure.
Yeah,
All right, so Sex and Violence introduces madness in the game. Of course, there's Mutant, Sarah Novus. Both of those are on the script. Pixie's here as well. And so how do you feel about madness in the game?
I think Madness is probably the. It might be the best like game mechanic that Blood on the Clocktower is introduced to social deduction. Poison, like drunken poisoning, is also really good, but Madness giving evil an excuse to lie and then be able to back out of it, and also making good players lie in the social deduction, I think just plays so much more into the social bit of it as opposed
Mm-hmm.
to poisoning's mechanical impact.
I love the way it plays in the game. And I don't know, there's just a lot of strategy behind it. Pixie is one of my maybe my favorite townsfolk in the game. I'm not sure. It's up there at least. Oh yeah, it's fun to play with.
Yeah.
I was mentioning and talking to somebody else that I kind of realized the power dynamic of a Sarah Novus, just because you pick a player, pick a character, and then you directly probably alter the way they behave, and I don't know. It's a weird power trip moment in my head, but I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, I can see why. I realize why that's fun now. All right, so I like to talk about what I call divisive characters, and I'm curious what you think about these in particular because I know you've obviously played a bunch. Apparently, you've played as all these, so yeah, just really curious what you would think in particular. So the first one here, how do you feel about Snake Charmer?
Snake Charmer, I think Snake Charmer might. No, Poppy Grower's a character. Snake Charmer's top three strongest townsfolk in the game that helps good win. Unfortunately, it doesn't always help the person who drew the token win.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I think Ben said it. Like, I'm attributing this quote to Ben Burns. It's like a pure gut check of social deduction when you're the snake charmer and deciding how long you're going to keep snake charming people. And I think that's cool. I think characters like that should exist. Whether or not it's fun for a someone who's never drawn the token before and hasn't played much Sex and Violence to snake charm the demon on the first night. Whether that's fun or not for them is subjective, I suppose. But I think
Mm-hmm.
uh, on average, it probably leads to. It has. I think it has a higher percentage of a feels bad game than I would like for newer players, but sometimes that happens.
Yeah, that makes sense. You just mentioned it, so let's go ahead and talk about Poppy Grower.
Yeah, I think Poppy Grower is fine. It's obviously quite strong and shouldn't be on beginner or intermediate intended scripts, but uh, I think it's good. Turning the uninformed majority versus the informed minority dynamic a little on its head to both of those being uninformed is, I think, interesting. It requires some care, but I think it's a good character in general. Probably needs some sort of interaction to where if it's poisoned or drunk, it still goes out. But that's
One
I'm
can
not a game
dream.
designer.
One can
Yeah,
dream.
yeah. I'm not a game designer, but
All right, how do you feel about a politician?
I think politician is. I think it is what it is. It's when I draw it, I think it's just a villager. Like I'm of the opinion, and when I storytell, I do make sure that politicians know this, that the politician flipping and winning with evil should be so rare that it's an afterthought. Really, like a politician shouldn't be, unless they're going to be doing it for the entire game and actively making it that they are the most obvious and clearest to clearest cause to win, or cause the good team to lose, then they shouldn't be flipping, and that's very hard to do with no ability, no killing power. Um, and so like I think my hot take with politician is that storytellers have been too lenient with giving the flip to where like the and doing that kind of publicly to where the average perception of what the flip should be is a little skewed.
Yeah, I feel like there's probably some kind of sweet spot. I won't claim to know what it is, but I do know especially the worst case scenario is storytellers who are like, oh well, the politician voted for not the demon on the end, so they get the flip.
Yeah, yeah, I think I'm probably a little too harsh. I think you're right. The sweet spot's there is a sweet spot, and I'm probably more on the side of not giving it than is probably correct. But I think that's probably the average is too far on the other side.
Yeah, yeah, I think that makes sense. All right, next character. How do you feel about Heretic?
Heretic. I used to have stronger opinions on Heretic. Heretic, I think, is the only one that we've talked about that I haven't been. Um, I think Heretic is fine. It like it requires good to do a lot of lifting without any slip ups, which can be a little difficult. And warping the game around something like that
Mm-hmm.
is hard to balance in a way that keeps the fun. But I think there are a lot of scripts that can do that. I think Milk. I'm sure Milk mentioned it. FM Jason's "Okay, but hear me out" is a fantastic script that has a Stormcaught heretic, um, and I think that like that there's so many good games that I've had of that script that I think that script alone honestly has brought the heretic beyond like up in my esteem a lot.
I have to run that sometime. I've never ran that or played in it either.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, I've definitely been using uh, the Grim Scenarios put out, kind of like their own recommended list of custom strips,
Yeah,
and I've definitely appreciated that because I've craved finding more scripts that are well tested and kind of known to run, if not balanced games, then at least fun games. It's hard to get a custom script truly balanced, especially compared to like a base script.
yeah,
But yeah, I do know that's on there, and I know if it's on there, it's got to be for good reason. So yeah, I should run
yeah,
that sometime.
yeah. I think that's among a lot of the storytellers who the Grim Scenarios like storytellers who put that list together. It's among a lot of our favorite scripts.
Cool. All right, next character. How do you feel about Atheist?
I I think this is probably the one that people will disagree with me the most on. I think Atheist was a they asked if they could and didn't ask if they should character. Um, and Atheist isn't a hard to know for me, but it's a uh, very close to I need to trust everyone in this uh, group and the storyteller a lot for me. Um, I think uh, Avery mentioned that it's very close to a hard no for her when you talked to her.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are more people that I am willing to like trust to storytell atheist games with me, but not many more.
Yeah, and that's been pretty close to everybody's responses. Depends on the storyteller. Some are more into it and some are less into it, but almost unanimously, it's depends on the storyteller.
Yeah, yeah, I think that makes sense with something that's so storyteller agency.
Yeah, and really, I think at this point, I would say the only character harder to storytell than Atheist, probably in my opinion so far, it's still new, but is a wizard, because that's for me almost more difficult because at least Atheist you have the entire control. The wizard, you're
Yeah,
at least partially reliant on what the player is going to wish.
yeah, I think I agree. I think Wizard, I think, is definitely the hardest character to run. Mostly because of what you said. It's so
Mm-hmm.
reliant on the the wizard having a good sense of what they want to do and also what's fun for the group,
Mm-hmm.
which is another thing that happens. Like sometimes wishes go uh, a little much, and then it's hard to course correct once you've kind of gone down that path.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but sometimes wishes are also just great and everyone's having a laugh. So
Yeah. And Wizard's probably a character that'll be on this list eventually. Right now, I figure it's still too new. I know a lot
yeah,
of people, if they played with it at all, it's probably not a ton. But yeah, like I said, I could imagine a future Wizard being on this list. But we'll see how that goes. I guess how it plays out.
yeah, I think that makes sense.
All right, last character on this particular section. How do you feel about Legion?
I like Legion a lot, actually. I don't know if that's popular. I think people seem to get nervous when Legion's on a script, and then just kind of don't like to play with scripts that have Legion on it, so they don't get the experience of it. And this also might be from the majority of the times I'm in Legion games. I'm in the Legion as opposed to not being in the Legion, which I think is another bit of it where like just kind of knowing that so many people are on your team and you have a ton of just kind of the world is your oyster at that point. uh I can understand the not enjoying the other end of that, but I think it's another interesting flip of the dynamic of uninformed majority versus informed minority.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly the informed majority just doesn't have a ton of power, which I think is quite cool.
Yeah. Have you played Legion much in person?
The I think the only time that I can remember playing Legion in person, there may have been other times that I'm forgetting, but one that sticks out in my mind very clearly was at the first Clocktower Con. Uh, there was it was in half of the 108 game with I think 13 players. So we had I don't remember the exact number, but one of the bluffs that I got was investigator. So I asked the storyteller if she would possibly do this in a Vortex game or a Legion game, but I said investigator 0, much like a librarian 0 would get, and she rolled with it. She said it's something she might do. She just I don't know that that's something she would do now or on average, but she rolled with it. She wrote it would be a legal thing to show. I was killed, which was which made a ton of sense given what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think like that's the only one that sticks out to mind. But I think it also goes back to your point about something I want to do better. You said you were trying to be better about pulling people aside and just kind of talking to them during games.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's like a really good thing to be doing, and it's something I really want to get better at doing myself. But also like players talking to their storytellers about what their plans are,
Mm-hmm.
what they're trying to do is also just really good to do. Your storyteller, if especially if your storyteller can't help you if they don't know what you want to do.
Yeah. Um, Especially, I had for example, I had a drunk who pulled a Raven Keeper token, and they ended up picking a good player, so it didn't matter. But if they some of the evil players, if they picked them, I'm like, I don't know what to show because I couldn't quite pin down what they were claiming. Of
Yeah.
course, one of them ended up being the demon who was uh, just claiming anything and everything. So so maybe it wouldn't have mattered, but. But yeah, it's good to talk to a storyteller, both for good and evil players. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Next section here, I call this or that. I'll just name two characters. You can interpret it however you want and respond to it however you'd like. So first couple characters here I picked out. How about sailor or juggler?
Ooh. Okay. I'm gonna go with the more interesting thing to be eaten by a cannibal. So I'm gonna go with juggler.
So I guess what do you find interesting about that interaction?
So actually on last Tuesday or this past Tuesday, there was a on the stream a script. I forget the name of the script, but juggler was Sarah Novus mad as not the juggler, and there was a cannibal in the script. And the juggler tried to juggle some people as a Nodashi. So I executed her for madness, but still got to give the juggler her number, or I got to give the cannibal her number. And so like that was the first time any of us had ever seen that Jinx in action, and it was really cool. It was actually pretty, like, it helped narrow down a lot, and it confirmed the juggler and the cannibal to each other. It did a lot. So like, if the juggler's cannibal food on night 1 or night 2, it's super interesting. After that, it's a little awkward, but it's a future problem.
Yeah. And that's one of the newer jinxes between juggler and cannibal that allows the cannibal
Yeah.
to still get juggler's day one info.
Yeah.
If you're the sailor, do you try to get yourself executed for science, quote unquote?
No, I'm not a big believer in executing good players, especially on like BMR or anything where that's going to come up. Like if town wants to execute me because there's information or they think I'm evil or whatever, I'm not going to vote on it because I'm good. But like they can do what they want. But I'm never going to offer up for science or whatever. I think that's generally a waste.
That makes sense. All right, next couple characters. How about village idiot or mayor?
Ooh. Mayor.
Why mayor?
Again, I'm still on the cannibal food arc. Village Idiot, I think, has some problematic interactions with a couple characters, including Cannibal. Whereas I think Mayor's just like a really cool and good. Like it's a cool alt win con that the good team needs to buy into, and then it can protect itself as long as it's making it hard for the good team to buy into it, which I think is just kind of a cool dichotomy for a player to kind of navigate.
Yeah, and I've been dying to say this somewhere, like on a video or a stream, but yesterday I ran 3 in person Trouble Brain games. This is a bit of an aside, but between the 3 games, we had wins via the Saint, the Mayor, and the Slayer. That was the 3 games, but we did get a Mayor win, and that was with a Mayor who hard claimed at the very start of day 1 and was never targeted by evil.
Oh, you love to see it.
Nobody believed him until pretty much the end, but it kind of came down between people kind of willing to bet on it and the demon kind of being stuck to needing to not go for it.
Yeah, I think a lot of us have been in that position too, as the demon needing to, just kind of needing to accept it.
Yeah. To be fair, the demon did have 3 votes on him, and it was enough where everybody could overturn it or at least tie it. So basically, he's like, you know what, let's go for the mayor win then. So
Yeah,
he did, knowing he was going to lose, he did push for the mayor win and got it, and it was fun. Yeah, I just never seen 3 TB games in a row where it was Saint, Mayor, Slayer.
yeah, that's really fun.
All right, next couple characters here: Barber or Saint, and I think one thing I've never seen is a cannibal with a Saint ability.
It's on my bucket list. Yeah, I like even without the cannibal food, I think I would still I like the barber a lot more. The Saints kind of like it's a bluff that you just kind of decide to deal with later, and I don't think that's leaves a lot of interesting space to do stuff with. Whereas a barber, there's a lot to do. I think something that's kind of become not popular, I wouldn't say, but like has been gaining traction on the Grim Scenario server is philosophers going barber and then like getting killed to barber swap and like having the demon barber swap the philosopher back into play to get a
Oh, that's
philosopher you
fun.
said confirming the barber swap, which is really like that's a really fun thing that uh started picking up. And yeah, I think like you
That's a
can't do
lot of fun. I
stuff like
never
that
thought
with the
about that.
same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose that's more the philosopher doesn't you don't really think of the philosopher going into outsiders, but
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
do that with the Saint, I guess.
Right. To tell a barber story real quick. I ran S&V this last Friday, and I think I already mentioned it was one of the wildest games I'd ran in a long time of S&V. Barber gets executed. Demon decides to swap it back and play, which is something I don't see much anymore of nowadays. Most people don't want to kind of do that confirmation between good players. But he did that, and then he killed the new Barber to get yet another swap. And I think he was trying to get several abilities out of play, like good abilities, which
Mhm.
would have worked, except the last player he swapped with had also been pit hagged into mutant or one of the other outsiders. But either way, it left with a an alive barber at the end after two barber swaps. The fun part
Okay.
is we had a harlot, a good harlot traveler, who was he was going to be his last day, so he ended up picking the demon, who was a Fangu. And the Fangu, basically knowing that he could swap himself away, said yes to the harlot. So
Hmm.
harlot learns Fangu. Day starts. Harlot goes, I'm just going to put this out there. Connor is a Fangu. I'm traveling out. Take care. Of course, Connor had swapped himself with a you killed the barber, swapped himself with the pit hag. Actually, sorry, the pit hag had turned himself into the philosopher, so now he's the philosopher.
Mhm.
Anyway, long story short, they execute him. He's not the demon anymore, so they're like, oh well, the traveler must have been evil. They did kind of figure it out anyway, but that was one of my favorite barber plays I've seen in a long time, and that could only happen. That specific play could only happen because of a traveler.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah. Um. All right, couple more outsiders here. How about Puzzle Master or Butler?
Ooh, I don't think Emma's gonna like this, but I think Puzzle Masters. I think I would take Puzzle Master. Puzzle Master's uh, a little more interesting to me than the Butler. Although I do really like the Butler. I don't think I'm going to talk about the Butler a little bit, I
Go
suppose
ahead.
here, but I don't think people who I get why people don't like the Butler. I think those people are wrong because the Butler. I think they don't understand why the Butler is what the Butler's purpose on TB is. It's to
Mm-hmm.
teach you to watch votes and why votes matter
Yeah.
and to trust people's voting, which is like why when people try to replace it with zealot or ogre or things like that, it just
Yeah.
kind of I like it rubs me really the wrong way, and like I don't
I
get why
agree.
people want to do that. But anyway, back to the puzzle master. I think I really like the puzzle master in that if you can figure out who's drunk and why someone's info is bad, you have something very strong. I much like the politician that we talked about earlier. I think storytellers are a little too make it a little too easy on average. Um, I think to put like a rough number on it because that's the easiest way to do it. I think Puzzle Master should probably solve it less than 10% of the time, probably closer to like 5 to 7 ish. is a rough estimate of where I think that's makes it still very much an outsider.
Hmm.
Uh, but it's something that's like it's something that's wrong. I think the most information that a puzzle master should get is that somebody's drunk in play. I think that's a lot of information for an outsider to have in general.
That makes sense. Maybe you'll like my storytelling. I feel like puzzle masters very rarely accurately solve it. Nina does like tell the story. I think it was Nina who she'll let me know here in my side chat. But I was pretty sure in her first game in our group, it was extension cord, and she was a puzzle master, and she did correctly. Yeah, she did. She did confirm. Yeah, she did correctly guess the puzzle drunk, learn the demon, and of course nobody believed her. Then
Yeah,
evil ended up winning. So
yeah.
yeah. All right. Next couple of characters here. How about Fearmonger or Vizier?
Uh, I enjoy playing Vizier more, but I think Fearmonger is probably a more interesting and probably a character that more people would enjoy playing. I think really enjoying Out at Evil kind of is like a niche thing that not everybody does, which is
Mm-hmm.
fair. This is a deception game where you don't really want to be out at evil a lot of the time. And I think there's a lot of unfortunate social dynamics with outed evil players kind of getting excluded, which is kind of my one of the behaviors that is my least favorite part about like playing with strangers who I don't know is that happens
Right.
more often. Uh, but so like I picking between the two, I suppose I would pick Vizier, but would understand why someone would pick Fearmonger.
Yeah. I always like to kind of brag about my group because thankfully for a long time, players willingly talking to outed evil players not really been an issue. I know. So last year we went. So I recorded my very first online game back in 2020, and and we went back and rewatched that for kind of like the 4 year anniversary. And I have fond memories of that first game, but something I kind of forgot was that there were other players on my team because I was on the evil team who kind of suffered from being pretty much everybody kind of expected to be evil and accurately so, and then nobody really wanted to talk to them. I'm like, I'm so glad we moved past that. I worked hard
Yeah,
to get our group to move past those kind of behaviors, and yeah, talk to your outed evil players or even players you think might be evil. It's worth it. Most importantly, it's fun. Uh, you're here to play a game and have fun with everybody, so let everybody have fun. Um, but I always maintain that. I mean, I'm not saying it's like the most useful thing in the world, but there is some use to just seeing how they're behaving, what they're trying to push, kind of doing those mind games. I've seen so many out of evil players be like, "Oh yeah, Sabenite's a demon," and then Sabenite actually is a demon, but they're
yeah,
trying to do that double bluff. And then they do that so often that everybody's like, "Oh well, Sabenite probably is a demon because he's done this all the time, where he double bluffs." It's like a revolving meta.
yeah. I agree, and I think part of like something that's really cool about like the communities that are like have grown and like are like structured communities. I think that this is a problem that doesn't really happen as much. Sometimes it
Mm-hmm.
happens, but it's on a lesser scale, as opposed to like we talked about cons earlier, or like on the unofficial where it's just kind of everybody uh, popping in. It's I think you're more likely to run into that because people don't know each other, and it's a lot harder to kind of do that to your friend that you know that you will
Mm-hmm.
probably play again with in like a day or two.
There's probably a whole dissertation that could be done about playing the game with people you know versus playing with complete strangers. It's a topic for another day, I suppose. But
Yeah,
it's really interesting to think about, and you do have to think about it, of course, with many of these characters. I presume it's something TPI is thinking about. I know, for example, the character of the Rogue. Uh, that's the whole reason why they kind of discontinued it years ago because they realized, oh, this is like super fun with groups that were friends, but it's not going to work in like a convention setting. Which,
hmm
if for those who might not know, Rogue was a character that basically allowed you to cheat. Uh, it, I think it was like if you cheat, but the storyteller catches you, something bad might happen. Uh, I do love the story though about why they decided to cancel it though, because it was they were drawing tokens out of the bag and somebody drew the rogue token, looked at it, and put it back in, and they thought it was hilarious. But like I said, that's not really something that ultimately works in, for example, a convention setting if you do that.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right, couple more characters here. How about summoner or pit hag?
Ooh, I really like a pit hag, and uh, I think that pit hags should be more creative with what they're doing, instead of like just making outsiders. Like if you wanted to do that, you may as well have just been a baron. Uh, Instead, like I think making like some good minions are interesting. Like a good Nodashi or a good Puka can be really really spicy if your group's up for something like that, and if your storyteller is one to let a good demon like show as like not have any kills instead of two. Uh, like I think maybe making a good or an evil dreamer is something interesting, and also like just make good powerful townsfolk. What are uh like maybe example make a flower girl like 2 days in. That's gonna mess somebody up. Like no one's tracking votes for that.
Yeah.
Make a savant. Like then town has to decide if they trust that someone is a savant now or a dreamer now, and then it also opens up space for you to make a drunk that then has a savant token or a dreamer token or something.
Mm-hmm.
So like I think getting more creative with a pit hag is something that people should think about trying to do more. Branch out from just making outsiders. And then Summoner's cool. One of my favorite games was a Summoner game, where I was the summoner. It was me and Beardy uh, on the TPI stream, and Malishon, a good friend. Uh, she correctly Alsahir guessed the two of she wasn't the Alsahir, but she Alsahir guessed Beardy and I were minions, and that was it. And so I immediately summoned onto her, and
Great.
then I told Beardy what happened, and neither of us talked to her for like 2 days. And she was like, "Yeah, I figured it out." Like, yeah, it's great.
I love that.
Yeah.
Uh, I have quite a range of. I have two summoner games under my belt. One was before it was released, and made basically just found the most trusted player I could and turned them to. They were the innkeeper. Turned them to a demon. Somehow we managed to win that game. And then, at least in my head, rather infamously, uh, the reveal stream didn't draw the summoner token, but then we had re-rack, and on the re-rack I drew the summoner token. Got executed day two before I could make a
Yeah.
demon. And Ben was like, "Well, I think this is the first time we can't use a reveal game for a YouTube video." I'm like, on the plus side, they ran that script several times over and still didn't produce games they were happy with. Put it on YouTube, and then finally, me and Taylor made a script called "The Ones You Least Expect," and that apparently generated a good enough game to go on YouTube. So that is
Well, there you go.
you have the start of the reveal game where they talked about the summoner, and then spliced in as a whole different game.
Yeah.
And then my quick pit hack story is I mentioned that SMV game from this last Friday, and I think it was the demon convinced the pit hag to turn themselves into the philosopher so that they could go snake charmer, and that could be their out if they need to. And didn't exactly didn't exactly the barber swap happened instead. But anyway, I love that play.
Yeah.
It was different. Our group doesn't usually do that kind of thing. I'm hoping it's maybe a start of a new meta to make more evil philosophers. I
Yeah.
love that.
Philosopher's a great one. A lot of townsfolk are really really cool when they're evil.
Yeah, you can
Uh,
hide hide a drunk somewhere
yeah.
that normally would be at least somewhat traceable. Um, I my dream is to have an evil snake charmer who snake charms a demon, and um, yeah, I don't know. I just think it's great play. Good way to move the demon without also any
Yeah.
tells, no extra kills, no barber swaps. Yeah, good stuff. All right, now we got that out of the way. Now we got some demons. How about Vortox or Nodashi?
Ooh. Hmm. I think I lean towards Nodashi, but my hot take is I think both of them are pretty weak.
I
Like
think I
they're
would agree with
both.
that. Yeah,
I think they're like Nodashi is very traceable unless like the positioning on the Grim's pretty good. Um, or like the script filter, like extension cord, I think is quite good at making it harder to track the Nodashi just based on poisonings.
I tried.
Yeah, yeah. And then Vortox is, I think, much like a bunch of other characters, is a bunch of other evil characters is better on the script than necessarily in play. Um, like just the threat of the Vortox win con makes the good team speed up a little bit, which I think is a net benefit for evil.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of, especially on its home script, there's a lot of binary information that is once you figure out it's Vortox, it's easy to flip, and then some characters just get stronger. Like the Savant getting to false statements is it once they know that it's false is incredibly strong.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that for as much as I do like S&V, it feels like Fangu is like way more powerful than any other demon on
Oh
field.
yeah.
I hate to say for some of my favorite S&V games, almost all involve either like Fangu and or Pit Hag, just because
Mm-hmm.
those are kind of how a lot of chaos happens. And if you don't have those, it almost feels like Evil has a lot more work ahead of them to try to get anything done.
Yeah, I agree. And like it's unfortunate that Vigor Mortis is one of my favorite demons, but it's just so much weaker than almost every other demon that it's hard to put on a lot of scripts.
Yeah. All right, final two characters here. We'll do some experimental ones. How about Leviathan or Leech?
Ooh, I'm gonna go with Leviathan. For like maybe a year or so, I was really on a Leviathan kick, trying to make like a really good Leviathan script and play Leviathan games. I'm not quite there anymore, but Leviathan is like I think it's so cool to like just have something that you know the days or the time, like you have a set time limit on the game,
Mm-hmm.
and then evil just kind of needs to ride that wave long enough to get through, and then like good should be able to get as much information as they need in order to solve the game. uh, but if there's any missteps, then they just don't get to because of they're on what is essentially the same time limit as others, but they don't have a way to mess up too much. I think it's just kind of it's I think it's really cool and a lot of fun to play. And then Leech is also good. I think the issue with Leech is a lot of people think it goes on a BMR script,
Right.
which because it survives death, so it should go on the script with Pacifist, Sailor, Tea Lady. But it doesn't. Like the worst case scenario is that you put it next to a tea lady's you leech host a tea lady's neighbor. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
just a feels bad scenario for good. Or you leech host the sailor who tries to kill himself for science. So I think leech goes on more S&V scripts actually, where it's a lot of info that's harder to parse, and
Right.
there's reasons why that info's might be messed up. And then like if town executes the leech and the leech survives, you're out at evil, which might not be as much fun, but you're also if you weren't out at evil, you would have lost. So it's kind of like you're kind of your catch 22, and hopefully you're in a community where you still get to have fun while out of evil.
Yeah, I've started leaning that way of wanting leech scripts without any other way to survive execution. Um, it does require players who are okay with being out at evil.
Yeah,
We've already kind of talked about that, but yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting. It still gives leech incentive to not get executed.
yeah,
So it's not confirmed to leech and not confirmed who the leech is. But if they are executed, like you said, they still have a lifeline. Goods learned a lot, but they still have to do more work. I also like just in general how leech. So I ran a game once a while, it's been some time ago, where there's like a lot of nominations, a lot of stuff going on, and one player in particular goes, "It feels like everybody's getting pushed on except me." And guess who was the leech host? um, it kind of punishes people who. I mean, I agree with you. I don't usually vote for myself or push for my own execution, but some people like just really never want to die, and
yeah,
those are the people that leeches are going to tend to want to pick as hosts.
yeah. I think I probably lean a little too much to never wanting to die, but I also am so incredibly suspicious a lot of the time due to my own choices that I make. That I tend to get executed pretty quick, whether or not I want to. So so I think I'm not the greatest leech host, but I'll fight for it.
Yeah. And then just real quick thing about the Leviathan. I like Leviathan quite a bit. It's hard to fit into a good script. But I think more than any other character we have, I'm curious to see how its home script will go once we have, like a home expansion for it. Um,
Yeah,
but I also like kind of chill and relax, and I feel like that's what Leviathan is.
yeah,
You're not going to be dying at night. If you're on the other team, you're probably not going to get executed. Although I have been executed in a Leviathan game before, but
yeah,
but yeah.
yeah.
All
I
right.
think my
Oh,
first,
okay.
I'm sorry, my first Goblin one was actually a Leviathan game.
Love that.
So,
All right. One final question here. Looking at the script here that you built, what character would you like to be in real life?
what character would I like to be in real life? Um, that's a good question. I think. Hmm, I think being being a mathematician, I think, like if it's in a position where it can support me, just kind of the academia and learning. My background is STEM, computer science, but also like math. So I think being able to do that full time and kind of delve far into that would be a lot of like it'd be interesting to get back to my roots of like learning for learning's sake.
Yeah, sounds good. Um, not this is a problem. I did notice mathematician's not actually on the script.
Oh, on the sorry, on the
No, it's
uh,
so the whole reason I started asking about the specific script is I would ask people just in general, what character would you like to be in real life? And there's a lot of characters in the game, so people were kind of
yeah,
like, let me think about it. So I was like, yeah, just pick one from the script. You don't have to pick again if you don't want, because you had a good
uh,
answer. You can if you want, but
yeah,
I'm just looking up
uh,
here like mathematician's not on here.
yeah. If I had to grab one off the script, I think librarian for a similar thing, like learning for learning's sake and knowledge for knowledge's sake is something that I think is cool to strive for and to do, and librarians do that, and also public librarians are doing an incredible service to the public, and then academic librarians are also doing a great service to like further other people's education. So I think that's another thing that I would like to that would be cool to be able to kind of build into my life resume.
Yeah. A friend of mine recently had a job interview at a library. They unfortunately didn't get the job, but I was kind of hearing the story about how the interview went. and she had researched the library ahead of time, and they even do like nowadays like 3D printing like services, which is pretty
Yeah.
cool. And I've been a little bit more back into reading for the last like year, but yeah, it made me think I'd kind of like to work in a library. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, good choice. Not that I'm here to judge your choices, but I think it's a good choice. All right. Well, before we go, is there anything you'd like to plug?
Yeah, you can find me on mostly Grim Scenarios, the Discord server, the stream, the not on the podcast, but uh,
The
around on
the
Grim
breakfast
Scenarios.
cereal,
Yeah,
the
the
T-shirt.
breakfast cereal. What else is there? Yeah, the merch store, the website grimscenarios.com. Uh, uh, you can find me there. I'm there all the time. I'm also on formidable.plot on Instagram and TikTok, which is uh, sometimes around where we talk, Avery, Bunny, and I talk about our thoughts on the social game of Blood on the Clocktower. Uh, and then you can also find me, Avery, our friends Walter and Z, also Jaws. We're back from our hiatus, Jaws STS on Twitch, where we kind of play variety games, mostly roguelites. Uh, we started with Slay the Spire Couch Co-op, and then just today we came back from our hiatus. We were playing some Splunky 2. So come join us. 11 a.m. Eastern on Sundays. Formidable.plot when we post on Instagram and TikTok. And then, of course, Grim Scenarios basically every day of the week. But Tuesdays, 7 p.m. Eastern, Milk and I stream.
Great. All right. Well, Sabenite, thank you for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right. And then thank you all for watching. We'll be back next week with another episode of Hard Climb.